there we go. I just trying to fix the sound a bit to see. Trying to fix
possible by Skillshare, an online learning community.
What? I'm confused right now. What? Okay,
Stick around until the end of the video to learn how you can get an exclusive deal just for Oversimplified viewers.
Why is it in that?
So what else is happening?
Albania.
Well, when I said Britain was all alone, that wasn't entirely true. Many Commonwealth nations and other allied colonies had joined the war in Britain's support. They would play a key role throughout the war, particularly in the African and Italian campaigns.
Getting
on the Axis side, Germany, Italy, and Japan signed a defensive Tripartite Pact, bringing their military lines even closer together. The Soviet Union's war against Finland should have been an easy...
Okay. Let's rewind. So...
It's a deal just for Oversimplified viewers. So what else is happening? Well, when I said Britain was all alone, that wasn't entirely true. Many Commonwealth nations and other allied colonies had joined the war in Britain's support. They would play a key role throughout the war, particularly in the African and Italian campaigns. On the Axis side, Germany, Italy, and Japan signed a defensive Tripartite Pact, bringing their military lines even closer together. The Soviet Union's war against Finland should have been an easy victory, but it became a humiliating struggle, and their military ineptitude was put on full display. In the end, they did force the Finns to sue for peace. Then, they continued their honorable campaign of pushing around much smaller countries by annexing the...
By the way, it's something I have heard and read about Finnish war, battle for Finland or whatever. So, there's two things. One is around here by the border of Norway, something around here. So there was this guy called Max Manus who was, I think he was a sergeant or corporal or something, but he was basically like a master saboteur. There's a movie about him. Basically what it tells is how he and fellow Norwegians fought back the Germans from Norway by sinking ships. It's really interesting and really emotional, you can say, because most of his friends died. So when the war was finally over, he basically was all alone and he isolated himself. Yeah, talking about it kinda gets me emotional, but yeah, and down south in Finland there was this one Finnish sniper, that his nickname was White Death. Okay. White Death. Simo Hayaha. Heyaha. I think you pronounce it. There is a song about him also. Same thing, it's a song about Battle of Britain. But yeah, it's the same band that made the song. It's really awesome to listen to. If you want history and music. But basically he holds or held the record for most, I don't know if it's most kills in a day too, but he had over 500 kills with only his sniper alone. But he also had his trusty submachine gun next to him. I don't remember what it called. Finish submachine. Yeah, Sumi M31. KP31. That's the one I'm talking about. It's really... it is a weapon that I found on Battlefield 5. Battlefield 1 was about World War 1. Battlefield 5 is about World War 2. So it was their first time back to World War 2 after, I think, 1942, back in the early 2000s. Or the end of 2000s? I don't know. Like right around... It was in the middle of 2000s, if I'm correct. Let me see here. Battlefield 1942. 2002! Oh my god. The game is that old? Well, I played that so much back then. I really want DICE and Battlefield to remake it. But yeah, whatever. Enough of me ranting. About the game alone, the battles in the game basically tells the story of where the battles took place and all that. Anyway.
For peace. Then, they continued their honorable campaign of pushing around much smaller countries by annexing the Baltic states and part of northern Romania. France's colonies in equatorial Africa were like, heck no, we aren't going to join the Germans, and they all pledged their allegiance to free France, except for Gabon, which had to be taken by military force. The Allies also tried to capture the strategic port of Dakar, but that ended in failure. Mussolini had seen Hitler's successes, and he thought now it was Italy's time to shine, so he tried to take British Somaliland, and that went pretty well. Then he tried to take Egypt, and that went less well. Then he tried to take Greece, and that went really badly. Churchill began referring to it as Europe's soft underbelly.
Oh my god.
He began favoring a military campaign from the south and started sending British troops to Greece. All of this had Hitler pretty concerned, and he moved to protect his southern flank. He had been getting friendly with Hungary and twisted their arm into signing the Tripartite Pact and joining the Axis powers. Romania was also eager to join for protection against the Soviet Union. The Tripartite Pact was designed to prevent any other countries from deciding to join the Allies. Specifically, Britain's old ally, the pesky United States of America. When war first broke out, American public opinion was strongly against joining in. In 1940, there was an election. The Republican candidate said, "I will not send any young Americans to die in Europe." And sitting President Franklin D. Roosevelt said, "I will also not send any young Americans to die in Europe. Unless I have to, then I might." And Roosevelt won. Churchill asked him to join the war, but Roosevelt said, "No can do, Winston, but you know what? Here, have some weapons." America began supplying the Allies with food and munitions.
Yeah, weapons is something they always had.
Thousands of Allied supply ships in the Atlantic, including American ones. If the Germans could sever Britain's supply line, the UK would starve.
With a scissor.
The Allies had to come up with better technology to fight the U-boats. Improved radar, aircraft with longer range, better weaponry and convoy tactics. At one point, a man even called a meeting and said, "Pykrete, you take some wood, you take some ice, you put them together, you get pykrete." And then he pulled out a gun and shot some wood and it shattered. And then he shot some pykrete and the bullet ricocheted off it and hit someone else in the conference room. And then they tried to make a pykrete aircraft carrier, but that idea was scrapped because that's a really dumb idea. In the end, Alan...
Wow. Bullet ricochet. Yeah.
Turing and his team of codebreakers cracked Germany's Enigma code, and the U-boats gradually became less and less of a threat. Back in Africa, Britain decided to push Italy out of Egypt. Hey, that was pretty easy, so they kept going. Hitler realized he was going to have to finally step in and do something. He went to Bulgaria and Yugoslavia and said, "Hey, I'm going to move troops through you to get to Greece, so either join us or, you know, be invaded." Bulgaria opted to join them. Yugoslavia opted to be invaded. Then Greece finally fell to the joint German-Italian invasion.
Right.
The British had moved troops from North Africa to fight in Greece, which helped Rommel and his tank divisions push the British back to Egypt, and they could have kept going. But a small, mostly Australian force held out under siege for 8 months into...
Tobruk. Tobruk is actually a battlefield that was on the Battlefield 1942 game, actually. It was some of the most awesome flying simulator. No, not simulator. Basically, in the game, I used to fly. Either I was a pilot bringing people in to another area and they parachute down, or I was on the second position of a dive bomber. But anyway, Tobruk is known as a... Well, I'm not too sure from what it shows here. That is too little in my opinion to be Tobruk, because how I remember it basically from the game is that there was tank battles in Africa, and that was something that was, well, not popular, but the tank battles of the German Tiger, which is a heavy tank, that's where it got its name from. Fighting in the African War, or, well, yeah, Australian force,
city and disrupting their supply line. Despite having some success in the Middle East, the British didn't seem like any real threat for now. Hey, Soviet Union, look out! With 3 million troops, Hitler launched the largest ground invasion in history, and Stalin was far from winning. Both Churchill and Roosevelt warned him of an impending attack, but he dug his head in the sand, and the Soviets didn't stand a chance. Germany made staggering progress, with huge encircling movements capturing mind-boggling numbers of Russian troops. 250,000 at Bialystok, Minsk, 300,000 at Smolensk, nearly 700,000 at Kiev, and again at Vyazma and Bryansk.
That was Lithuania. No, not Lithuania, Ukraine. Kiev is the capital in Ukraine, I think. Or are the capital today. But back then it belonged to Russia. Could be wrong, but yeah. Leningrad, okay.
for 4 years. The invasion of Russia had been Hitler's main ideological goal from the beginning, and his hatred for the ethnic peoples there was now unleashed in all its fury. The Eastern Front of the Second World War was brutal for all that endured it. The Germans were now inside of Moscow, and that's it. It's all over.
Just knocking on Stalin's door.
Stupid cold. Hitler had hoped the Soviets would give up before winter, but they kept fighting. His commanders came to him and said, "Can we please dig into the winter and wait until spring?" "No, keep going." "But oil is literally freezing inside our vehicles." "That's fine, keep going." "We're having to leave the corpses of our frozen horses by the side of the road so we can still find our way in the snow."
Horses.
"Perfectly normal, keep going." Hitler hadn't given
Why did you even bring them in the first
place? Should have won by now. Then Stalin called in troops from the Siberian front, specially trained to fight in the extreme cold.
Yeah. Siberian front, those who tried to take Finland, as I was talking about. Basically, where Simo Hayoha embarrassed them, and Max Manus became something like not a Rambo, but he was basically really good when it comes to that battle, I think. Yeah.
The Germans were no match. They were now being pushed back. They had no choice but to dig in and wait for winter to end. Germany's victories were staggering, and Japan was eager not to miss the victory bus. Their war in China had come to a standstill, but they wanted to keep expanding their sphere of influence and getting those sweet, sweet raw materials.
Wait a minute. Is this before Pearl Harbor? In 1941, I think?
Plans to expand southward, but there was a problem. Southeast Asia was heavily colonized by America and Great Britain. It was also full of ocean. Ocean meant naval combat, and there was no way the Japanese Navy could stand up to the US and the UK. So they thought, wouldn't it be nice if we could destroy their navies before we begin our conquest? And so it was. On December 7th, 1941, the Japanese...
Just what I was thinking. It's still 1941 in this story. Oh my god.
Launched a surprise air raid on the US Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor and inflicted a huge amount of damage. They also attacked British colonies in Southeast Asia. Roosevelt had no choice but to declare war on Japan, and so did Churchill. Hitler then declared war on America, even though he totally didn't have to. The attack on Pearl Harbor seemed like a big Japanese victory, but they didn't attack any of the naval repair yards, fuel storage tanks, or the submarine base, meaning the Pacific Fleet would be up and running again pretty soon. In the meantime, though...
So here is how... I get that oversimplified rushes through things, but here is basically how Japan managed to bomb Pearl Harbor, and that was through the element of surprise, basically. So they had, I think, Japanese spies in America. I think something like that, and they basically radioed back to, or called back to Japan with updates of, well, that was in Hawaii or Pearl Harbor. The admiral or something was talking like, what can you see? Tell us what you can see so we can strategize or whatever. So here is that located, there is that, and all the boats were end up basically parked together and that's how the boats became an easy target. But yeah, thanks to the US Navy, they took care of the issue and fought back the waves of Japanese Air Force, or I don't know if it was Air Force or Navy, but they destroyed a lot of Zeros, which is Japanese airplane. Yeah.
The Japanese were able to begin their conquest. They took Guam, the Gilbert Islands, Wake Island, Hong Kong, and the Philippines. They forced Thailand to join them so they could march their troops through to Malaya. They swept through Singapore, North Borneo, the East Indies, New Guinea, the Solomons, and they were now threatening Northern Australia and the borders of India. Japan's victory had been as staggering as the Germans, and it reinforced the Japanese idea.
By the way, so you know you got Band of Brothers that focuses on the European side of World War II, but you also have the Pacific one, which is let me have a look to see. Oh my god, let me have a look to see what that documentary was called. Alright. So, Band of Brothers was one. I can't find it. The Pacific. The Pacific is the other documentary series. So they came, they were made, Band of Brothers was 2001 and 2010 was the Pacific series made. But yeah, from that I learned a lot about the battles, and yeah, kind of get an understanding of the order of the battles too. US Marines was the ones that traveled to, well, not traveled, but they was the ones that fought the Japanese. I don't know if US Army had much to do there. They were more focused on the D-Day with parachuting behind enemy lines, like one day before the D-Day took place. That's when it started for them, and that's where Band of Brothers comes into the picture. 506 Easy Company.
That this was a defined war which they were destined to win, but their victories had been based on speed, not power, and power would eventually catch up with them. For now though, in all occupied nations, the people suffered, Persecution, forced labor, harsh punishments for any who spoke out against their occupiers. In Europe, the Nazis were rounding up ethnic minorities and other unwanted groups and individuals. In particular, millions of Jewish people would suffer.
I wonder if what the green means, if that is battles that has been won, or I don't know. I wish someone could help out and tell me what different colors mean. Of course, Allied are blue, Axis are red. The blank ones are pretty much neutral, from what I gather. But yeah. So Spain was neutral. That's interesting. Okay.
Through the terrible events of the Holocaust. Brave resistance movements rose up in defiance of their invaders, while the people held out for hope. And hope was coming. Winter was over, and Hitler could continue his push eastward. But this time, he switched up his strategy.
You saw the picture of what do you call them? Resistance fighters, basically. So, in 1940 or something, there was a lot of people that traveled to England to get training in how to become, which is known as a SOE, and they specialize on sabotage and a lot of other stuff. That is also something you can see when you go to see the movie Max Manus, because they were trained in the same area as he was when he said he wanted to take back Norway from within, and that's where he learned it. So
he wanted to focus on the south. His plan was to cut off the Russian armies in the Caucasus, an area full of oil, and then invade the Caucasus and take all the oil. His forces moved across the north with ease, and Hitler got cocky. He rerouted the 4th Panzer Army south early, leaving the 6th Army to complete the encircling movement alone.
Yeah.
To do so, the 6th Army had to reach and take the key Soviet city of Stalingrad. The Russians defended fiercely, and Stalingrad saw some of the harshest fighting of the entire war.
I remember
the Soviets held out the German advance for 5 months as they battled in the war-torn city, which bought them valuable time. When the Germans had first launched their invasion a year earlier, the Soviets had moved their factories to the east. Those factories had been building a butt-ton of tanks and aircraft and getting the Soviet army up to scratch. Now, it was ready. Stalin gathered his new and improved forces around the city, and in an attack that resembled Hitler's own encirclement tactics, they began surrounding the 6th Army.
He fought back with his own tactics. That must been really embarrassing for Hitler. Like, come on. But of course, he used too many of his troops to go south to find more oil or something in the Caucasus. But yeah.
Kim Kuman said, "Hey, maybe we should retreat." But Hitler said, "No, you stay.
You stay." Yeah.
The entire 6th Army was trapped and had to surrender. With complete air superiority, the Soviets started pushing westward. For Stalin, it was a resounding victory. For Hitler, an absolute catastrophe. Things also weren't looking too good for Hitler elsewhere. With America now in the war, Allied bombing over German cities reached devastating levels. In Africa, the British had...
fuck. I wonder what if it's still... No, that is 42. Um, Hamburg. When was that? US bombing. Oh, okay, yeah, that took place the whole shebang. So, to that. Okay, in 1943, for 8 days. 43, alright.
Levels. In Africa, the British had pushed Rommel back again. Then they were pushed back again, and finally, after a decisive battle
back
at
and
El
forth.
Alamein,
El Alamein.
El
Alamein. That is the key.
Japan was also already seeing its rapid success being.
The key African battle I know is El Alamein, and of course Tobruk. Yeah.
And turned around. They attempted to take the island of Midway, but the US Navy was ready for the attack, and they sank Japan's carrier. Actually, they sank a lot of them. It was a battle from which the Japanese Navy would never recover. British, Indian, and Chinese troops held the line in the harsh jungle terrain of Burma, and the Japanese suffered losses in the Solomon Islands and New Guinea. They began to realize they were not invincible. With the Axis out of Africa, the Allies had to decide their next move. Churchill still wanted to attack from the south, while the Americans preferred a full sea invasion in northern France. All right, said the Americans, we'll do it your way. Allied forces successfully landed in Sicily and began moving north. They also carried out bombing raids over Rome. The thing was, many of the people in Sicily had relatives living in America, and they greeted the American troops quite warmly. With the war reaching home territory, most Italians just weren't that into it, and Mussolini was suddenly very unpopular. He was voted out by his own fascist Grand Council and was toppled from power. Italy immediately began negotiations for surrender. Hitler wasn't surprised and had already sent reinforcements southward. In an operation called Operation Axis, German troops quickly disarmed Italian troops in the north. The Allies continued fighting the Germans up through Italy, but then winter set in, meaning mud, and everything slowed to a halt. All right, said the Americans, let's do it our way as well. Germany had made itself a lot of enemies, and millions of Allied troops had been gathering.
Free Norwegian forces. Yes. It makes me honestly proud to see Norway there. Like I was talking about Max Manus, but it's so forgotten what he did. So there's no way that Oversimplified would mention it. Yeah.
In England, as factories worked around the clock producing the war material needed for a super crazy massive, the likes of which the world has never seen before, invasion of Europe.
Holy
the Germans knew an
smokes.
Allied invasion would come, but they didn't know where it would land. Thanks to Allied deception tactics, they thought there was a pretty good chance it would come at Calais. But the Allies were really going to land in Normandy because it was less fortified and the beaches were nicer. Under the careful planning of General
Yeah. So, what was it they did again? Well, I wouldn't necessarily say they pranked Germany by saying, we're gonna attack from here. Be ready. We're gonna attack from here. So basically, most of the Wehrmacht, which is basically the German army, was stationed, as you saw there, here. They were stationed around here somewhere. But of course, America had Normandy as the main target. So, yeah.
There's a pretty good chance it would come at Calais, but the Allies were really
Calais.
going to land in Normandy because it was less fortified and the beaches were nicer. Under the careful planning of General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the invasion that had been long in the making was just about ready to go. Just one thing was preventing the launch: the British weather. For a short while, everyone sat around waiting for a decent day, and then
the British weather. British weather, rain and all that. Yeah, makes sense. My question here is, will Oversimplified mention that US troops along with British paratroopers parachuted in France behind enemy lines, or do he think that it's all about what they did on the beaches alone?
On the night of June 5th, over 1,000 bombers took out and raided coastline defenses, while paratroopers were dropped inland in a bit of a chaotic operation, tasked with sabotaging defenses and capturing key bridges to stop any German reinforcements from reaching the beaches. Early the next morning, the barrage came, as Allied ships fired a huge number of shells at the German fortifications, and then the landings. The Americans at Utah and Omaha, the British at Golden Sword, and the Canadians at Juneau. It was a tremendous struggle with a great loss of life, particularly at Omaha, but the Allied troops captured the beaches and...
I wonder, what if there was something here? What then? Like, for example, if there was one nation that joined them, and I don't know. Oh, I heard something about, well, I saw something about on Band of Brothers where Irish troops or whatever was fighting too. But I don't know necessarily how, or, well, all I know is that they maybe fought I don't know. Neutral. Oh, they were neutral. Okay. Fianna Fair government. Huh. Oh. So basically they fought themselves. Huh. Okay. Canadians at Juneau. Alright.
The great loss of life, particularly at Omaha, but the Allied troops captured
Omaha
the beaches,
Beach,
and the landings were a success. Then they began their movements inland. They took the port of Cherbourg and the city of Caen. The Americans moved south to capture Brittany. Then, in a massive disaster for the Germans, British and Canadian troops from the north and Americans from the south trapped the German 7th Army in a near wipeout encircling movement. In August,
So he doesn't say what happened at Saint Mary-Lise or something, because that was some operation or whatever there was a objective of the American paratroopers or US Airborne, where they took the town by making Germans to leave. But that is actually how that is actually how most of this happened because of that, in my opinion.
Allied troops landed in the south of France to little resistance. On one beach, all they found was a Frenchman handing out champagne. Paris was liberated, and the Germans were pushed out of France as the Allies entered Belgium. In the
Right,
Balkans,
yeah,
the
yeah,
Allies
yeah.
started to push
So-
the Japanese out of Burma.
Okay.
As the Americans launched a two-pronged offensive in the Pacific. In the south, General MacArthur led the push to liberate the Philippines, while General Nimitz oversaw the brutal island-hopping campaign. American forces had to make hard-fought landing after hard-fought landing on fiercely defended small islands as they moved steadily towards the Japanese mainland. The
Yeah.
Japanese believed that the greatest thing a person could do was to die in battle, and the most dishonorable act was to surrender. As a result, they fought ferociously to the very end. And the closer the Americans got to the mainland, the more ferocious the resistance became.
Iwo
In February
Jima.
1945, the Americans captured the island of Iwo Jima, and an intense firebombing campaign of Japan's wooden cities began.
So
The Allies
they
suffered some
took
setbacks
over
trying to liberate the Netherlands, but they were making progress and were
airfield.
now threatening the industrial heartland of Germany. Hitler's health, both mentally and physically, was rapidly deteriorating. Things were looking bad, and he was desperate. He said, "We need to turn this thing around, and I have just the trick. Remember a few years back when we blitzkrieged through the Ardennes and trapped the Allied forces in Belgium? Well, I'm going to do the exact same thing. Again." He gathered his forces and tried to pound them through the Ardennes. He used up the remainder of Germany's strength and resources, and he managed to create quite a nice bulge. He also trapped some American forces in the Belgian town of
Right.
Bastogne. The Germans sent the trapped
Yeah.
Americans a message saying, "Surrender or be annihilated." When it was read out to the commanding officer, he said, "They want to surrender? No, sir, they want us to surrender." Nuts! And that's what they sent off as their official reply. General Patton's Third Army then managed to break the siege from the southwest, and the Germans were pushed back. Hitler's last-ditch attempt had failed,
Okay.
and what followed was a total collapse of the German forces.
So,
the Allies pushed into
you
Germany
can
from
say
both
they
sides.
were
The Soviet Union was
waiting.
Warsaw and kept pushing to Berlin. In his bunker, Hitler realized all hope was lost. Berlin fell, and
That, of course, that's what you think.
with it, Hitler's dreams of a great German empire. Two of the Axis nations had been knocked out, one to go. The Americans
I mean, of course, that's what public, of course, want you to think, that he really died in the bunker, but documents of, for example, X amounts of agencies say that he has been seen after 1945. Something about 1948 in where was it? Argentine? I don't know. There's a lot of things I discover from the show called Hunting Hitler. And from what I heard there, he had an escape plan because he had underground tunnels at his bunker. So he basically walked out, basically right in front of their noses, while they was busy trying to enter the bunker. And of course, guys like Hitler would have a what do you call it? A double, or I don't know how to. Basically, he had a well, you can say a double agent or whatever, like to impersonate him, or I don't know, to look like him. And that is pretty much what they found in the bunker, because the remains of Hitler wasn't even his. That's the crazy thing. it ended up belonging to a female. And that secret has been in U.S. Hands for years and years, because it took U.S. so much time just to analyze the body or whatever the Russians found. And yeah, they didn't even bother to check if it was the Russians. They was basically just happy the war was over, I guess. I can't blame them, but yeah. Sneaky things like that. It's not weird to me why the issues between America and Russia happened, the Cold War and all that. But yeah, whatever.
Began their assault on Okinawa, the last island before they would reach the
Okinawa,
the desperate Japanese fought hard, launching counterattacks on the
they
US.
also
The
fought
citizens of
with
Okinawa
Okinawan
suffered through the
karate.
the Allies now had to make a choice: either continue the devastating
I don't know what
the
that
Japanese
was.
mainland, or they could try to coerce the Japanese into surrendering now. In July, the first successful atomic bomb test took place in New Mexico, and the destructive weapon was ready for use. America and the UK were also seeing the Soviet Union not so much liberating as occupying its captured territories, and so they wanted to put on a show of force. On August 6th, the A-bomb fell on Hiroshima. Then, on the 9th, Nagasaki. The cities were reduced to rubble, and for the people living there, it was a terrible fate. But for the Allies, it achieved their main aim. In September, the Emperor announced Japan's surrender, saying the war situation has developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage.
Not necessarily.
After 6 years, war was finally over. The Allies occupied Japan for 8 years. The Emperor was allowed to keep his position, but General MacArthur made sure this picture was printed in the Japanese press to display to the Japanese people that their Emperor was not the divine, powerful being they had believed. Germany was divided between America, the UK, France, and the Soviet Union. In 1949, the Allied sectors were united into West Germany. The Second World War had been more terrible and destructive than the first. In its aftermath, two major superpowers with two very different ideologies had come out victorious.
I wonder if that was basically the battles alone, or was that in total with civilians dying, like those in concentration camps? I'm not sure, but yeah, that is a heavy number.
And the tension between the two of them would create a new kind of war. A very, very cold one.
Haha. Yeah.
Wow, Churchill, that looks just like me. And your app is doing really well. And this quesadilla you made is to die for. How'd you learn to do all this stuff? I used the link in the description to get 2 months of Skillshare for just 99 cents. Wow, tell me more. Okay.
Well, that's that. It's an awesome video by OverSimplified. Of course, me rambling on with unknown facts and stuff like that. That was basically yeah. If you wanna basically know more about that in general, then go ahead and go to, I think it's History Channel or something, and look up Hunting Hitler. Yeah, Hunting Hitler. So, according to documents that were declassified by FBI in 2014, Adolf Hitler may have survived World War II and fled to South America following the fall of Nazi Germany. And there's a lot more here. It is a three season series. I don't know. Yeah, I think they had more to it, but okay, what happened? The show was conceived. That was actually what was said, but that was the perspective from Russians' side, actually. Oh. What? Interesting. I really want to see more of it. Well, I really enjoyed watching this video by OverSimplified to get a little more understanding on how things played out. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Art school. Actually, he stole a lot of paintings. There was something about it that was said between him and Hermann Goering or something. They were stolen paintings that had a lot of value to it. But yeah, whatever. I'm gonna end this here. Oh my god, 54 minutes. Well, I have been ranting on so much. I'm gonna end this here. Sayonara. Adios. Goodbye. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos of me reacting to stuff. I really love history, and yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting to see how things happened. Yeah, I don't know what more to say. Anyway, I'm gonna go now, so adios amigos.